So in your book, Transforming School Culture, you talk about the believers and the tweeners and the survivors and the fundamentalists. And when we're working with our cohorts around the state, there's always a lot of resonance around the concept of the fundamentalists. Could you please tell us about fundamentalism among school staff and how it impacts schools and their culture, as well as how leaders should address the fundamentalists in their schools?
Well, the term fundamentalist actually came out of religious context. And often in a modern political context, people try to refer to it as an Islamic concept. But it actually came out of the Lutheran Church. As Martin Luther broke away from the Catholic Church and started the first Protestant movement, after he passed, the Lutheran Church had a difficult time with recruitment. And as the archbishops were gathered about how do we reignite the movement, there were a lot of people who were pointing to the fact, a lot of leaders in the church were the fact that there were antiquated strategies, antiquated protocol and traditions that didn't attract new converts. So they were making recommendations about changing some of the traditions of the church. Well, there's a group that got up and left in protest because they felt any challenge of the fundamental premise of Lutheranism was counterproductive, whether it was responsible for the lack of growth of the faith or not. And they became known as a fundamentalist. And in sociological terms, it means a person or group of people who believe there's only one pure way to behave or to practice. And they refuse to change even in the face of compelling evidence. So if a school's purpose is learning for all, and I have this theory that there's only one pure way to deliver service because it worked for me, I'm comfortable with it, my belief system is that auditory instruction, where students listen, process, regurgitate, one shot in a summative way, is the best and the only way to purely deliver services, regardless of the outcome, then I become a fundamentalist. Because my personal value system and my theory of practice conflicts with the stated objectives of the organization, which is learning for kids. So I don't even consider changes in practice because it doesn't jive, it causes cognitive dissonance with what I believe is a pure way to deliver it. So that cognitive dissonance typically encourages gossip, slander, backbiting, politics that nurture conflict between parts of the organization. And what happens with fundamentalists, they disrupt the stability of the organization, so we can't even have good, rational dialogue about changes to our practice. So I would say from an internal professional standpoint, the behaviors of fundamentalists are the biggest threat to us embracing the best practices that would work for our kids, because it's about them. It's not about the student.
So what do we do about that?
Yeah.
Well, one thing that we found in my Transforming School Culture study is that when leaders model the behavior for believers, they gave believers permission to have influence in the informal culture. Fundamentalists tend to operate very well informally and emotionally. So their political platform is to search for dissatisfaction and then nurture that dissatisfaction. And they nurture it emotionally and they nurture it privately. So fundamentalists do not thrive in environments where there is a logical dialogue and it's open and it's public. So a leader who has the courage to confront that openly and logically is now provided those believers who have access to the informal part of the culture has modeled the behavior that undermines fundamentalist influence. So there's a public addressing of the issue, and there's a private. No one leader can do it by his or herself, because silence, when I work with schools and I stimulate kind of an open dialogue about controversial issues, in an environment where fundamentalists are really savvy, they don't really engage. You have to make them engage. And their engagement happens at the break or in the parking lot. That's where believers' duty of peer pressure is essential. You have to stand up on what you believe is best for children. Now, as a leader, I can model that for you. I give you permission. But it has to be a coordination between the formal and the informal. So in Chapter 6 and 7 of Transforming School Culture, Chapter 6 I get into the nature of fundamentalists and their impact. And Chapter 7 is about how do we address it and how do we overcome it.
Could you talk with us a little bit about the accountability piece around fundamentalism? As a former principal, I ran into some brick walls around accountability for fundamentalism, but it clearly is a big piece of the picture.
Yeah. Well, accountability is one of 4 important strategies for either influencing fundamentalists positively or showing them the door. It has to be one of the two. Either you're going to change or you're going to have to leave. And if you stay, you're going to have to change whether you want to or not. That's the condition of staying. So we're looking at a leadership approach that's a balance between support and accountability. Support has to come before accountability. Many people who spiral into fundamentalism really are victims of their environment and how they've been socialized professionally and personally. So there are 3 high leverage supports that make accountability effective. If accountability is used out of season, it actually can be counterproductive. So 3 key tools for building consensus with people who are apprehensive and actively resistant. Number 1 is communication. People become reluctant to engage in the change process if historically authority has been used as the tool and we flip-flop from one thing to the next. If I can appeal to your sense of logic, there are some people who are willing to let go if they understand it is better. The second is emotional, it's building relationships. So what I say may make sense, but I'm your 5th principal in 5 years. Your issue isn't that you don't think that what I'm saying or where I'm taking to school is not logical. You don't trust me or the organization. So I have to build a bridge of trust. The third is incapacity. I call it answering the question, how? I know why it's necessary. I trust you. I just don't know how to unwrap a standard. I don't know how to create a proficiency scale. I don't know how to do a Tier 1 intervention. That's a very legitimate need. And that's an investment in training, resources, mentoring, protocol. My Transforming School Culture work showed that about 98% of the factors that lead to resistance to change could be addressed with those 3 specific leadership behaviors. And for that 2% who that doesn't work for, the only strategy left is authority. If you know why, you know how. We've addressed all of the issues of trust. I'm not asking you at this point, I'm telling you. But if that strategy comes before the support, it's out of season and politically counterproductive, because now you just made that person a martyr. You have to isolate him or her to a point where everybody recognizes that their behavior is illogical.
Thank you.